Hello, my name is Steve Bowler, and welcome to the Ansible GNS3 Lab Setup Part 1 video. In this video, we're going to be looking at how to install and configure GNS3, VMware Workstation, Ubuntu, and Cisco iOS. So what we're going to do in this video is explain and give a brief overview of GNS3, why we're going to be using it with Ansible, and we're going to download and install GNS3, VMware Workstation, Ubuntu, the Cisco iOS image that we want to use, and then we're going to connect the Ubuntu VM to the Cisco devices inside of GNS3. We're going to then verify reachability between the Ubuntu VM and the Cisco devices via ICMP, and then we're going to set up SSH on the Ubuntu VM and the Cisco routers. So this is all in preparation to getting Ansible set up and run, as we will on the Ubuntu VM. That's going to be in part 2. So part 1 is there's a lot to it. There's a lot of steps that we have to do to get this to work. So I've already done all of the work. I've got a good working configuration, and I have the step-by-step guide on GitHub that I will share in the link in this video. So to make this video, to shorten the video a little bit, I've put all of the steps in the step-by-step guide, but I'm going to just show you where you can go to download and install VMware. If you go to this link, you can get VMware Player. So you want to do that first. And so what I've done is I've installed it already. So that's the first step. The second step is going to be to download and install Ubuntu. And so I've already done that as well. So you want to go ahead and go to the ubuntu.com/download/desktop, and you can download 24.04. That's the latest version of the Ubuntu desktop. So I've already installed that as well on my computer. And just for the sake of time, what I've done is I've put all the steps on here. So I'll just run through them very quickly, and then we can proceed with the lab. So what we want to do is, once you've downloaded VMware and you've downloaded Ubuntu, you want to open VMware and create a new virtual machine. And then you point the install to the Ubuntu ISO image that you downloaded. So that's what I did. And then that will bring up, you just want to complete the VM with the wizard that you go through. You'll create your name of the box, username, password. You will name the VM and select the install location. And then you'll select the default disk options, and you'll click finish. And then the install will begin. So the install does take a little while depending on, your computer specifications, CPU, RAM, etc. So I've kind of cut that out of the video, but I have all of the instructions here on GitHub, so you can look at how to go through all of those. So once installation is completed, you're going to go ahead and reboot your Ubuntu server. And then this is what it should look like when you have it set up. So we'll open up VMware Player, and you should see your server. And so one of the first things that we want to do, with the machine powered off, we go to settings, and then we want to create a new network adapter. So I've already done that, but you just simply click add and then network adapter, finish. And then you want to change the settings of the network adapter. This one, we use the custom VMnet. So we're going to use this interface, and I have it right here in the step-by-step guide. You can see our second network adapter, we used custom VMnet 1 host only, and we added it. And so this is going to be the interface. If I scroll down in the step-by-step guide, this is going to be the second interface, is going to be the one that we bridge into our GNS3 topology. So that's going to allow the Ubuntu VM to talk to our Cisco appliances, our Cisco routers in this case. So again, this is just a brief overview of the Cisco, how we're going to manage multiple Cisco devices with our Ansible controller. And then so in later videos, what we'll do is we'll show you how to use the GNS3 VM, which is a whole nother topic. And that's going to allow us to bridge in other appliances, F5s, Palo Alto firewalls, F5 load balancers, Cisco FTDs, the firewall threat defense systems, and a bunch of other network appliances. Okay, so let's start by going back. We're going to go ahead and power on our system. And once we get this powered on, we're going to run through a couple of the settings. This is going to be to update the system, and we'll install our network interfaces, and then we're going to take a look at them. And so once that is complete on our server, our VM, we will go ahead and download GNS3, and we'll install it. So again, GNS3, just a brief overview of GNS3. It's used to virtualize. It's going to be it allows us to virtualize very complex computer networks on one computer. And so all we need to do is, what we'll see later in the video is, we'll see how we connect these routers to the switch and the switch to the VM. But GNS3 is a great tool. If you don't have access to physical equipment, GNS3 allows us to virtualize pretty much any network scenario that we want. It's a very powerful tool. Okay, so we're going to log into the Ubuntu server with the credentials that we created when we did the server installation. And then what we're going to do is we're getting to a terminal session inside Ubuntu. We'll open a terminal and we'll run some updates. So I've cut some of this out. That was the VMware install and then the Ubuntu install. I have all the steps in the step-by-step guide, so you can follow those if you want to build this out yourself. Okay, so now that we're inside of Ubuntu, we're going to go ahead and open a terminal session. And then we'll go ahead and gain super user permissions access. And then we're going to do the command apt install net-tools. So I've already did this command, but I just wanted to show you what that looks like. And then to look at our interfaces, you just do the command if config, and you can see that we have the NAT interface, which is ENS33, and then we have the VM interface that we created, the host-only VM interface, which is ENS37, And this is going to be the network that we connect to GNS3 on through this connection. So let's keep that in mind. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to do an apt-get update. So this is just going to perform a quick system update, and we're done. So the next thing we want to do is download and install GNS3. So we'll just click on the link. It'll bring us up to the page. We just click download, and it says that you need an account. I've already downloaded it, but I just wanted to show you what that looks like. So you want to create an account if you haven't already. And once you have it downloaded, it's a pretty easy step-by-step install. So after we have GNS3 downloaded and installed, we want to download the Cisco appliance file. So we go back to the GNS3 website, you go to Marketplace, and what we're going to use for this video, you can use, the Cisco 7200, the 2691. What I'm going to use is the Cisco 3725 for the video. So we click on that, and this is going to be the appliance file. So we're going to need this when we add this iOS to GNS3. So you just want to click download, and you'll see that the GNS3 appliance file has been downloaded. So I already have all this downloaded on my computer. You can see the appliance file is here, and then the next thing that we need to do is download the Cisco image. So I've already have the image downloaded, as we can see here, the 3725 12415 T14. And let's go ahead and open up GNS3 and create a new project. Okay, so this is what you should see when you open up GNS3. We're going to create a new project. We'll just call it Ansible GNS3 Lab Setup Part 1. And we'll hit OK. So what we can do is we can go to preferences. We'll see how we use that to include the VM, the Ubuntu VM into GNS3. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to load the iOS image into GNS3 via the new template and select the install appliance from GNS3 server. So let's go back to GNS3, and if we go to our routers, we'll go ahead and click new template, and we'll do the install an appliance from the GNS3 server recommended. From here, we have a list of devices. We're going to go ahead and select routers, and we'll go to the Cisco 3725, and we'll hit install. Now this is going to ask us if we want to install the appliance on the GNS3 VM or the local computer. So already we have this on the local computer, so we're going to select that option and hit next, and then hit next. And as you can see, it found the image that we have on our local machine. So we'll go ahead and click next. Would you like to install? Yes. And finish. And there you have it. We now see the 3725 showing up in GNS3. Let's go back to our step-by-step guide. And we'll go to, we're going to go ahead and now add the Ubuntu device to GNS3. And so how we do this is we go under the GNS3 VM, enable the GNS3 VM, and then we'll search for our Ubuntu server. So as you can see, the Ubuntu server is up and running. Let's go ahead and try to add it. So go to Edit, Preferences. Well, first thing we want to do is we'll just drag and drop one of the routers over. There we go. Okay, and we'll go Edit, Preferences. And then we'll go to GNS3 VM. We want to make sure that that's enabled. And then the Ubuntu 64-bit, we'll go ahead and hit refresh. And that's what we want to add. So the next thing we want to do is go under VMware, and we go to the Advanced Local Settings. And we want to make sure we have block network traffic originating from the host OS selected. And then we want to select VMnet 2 to 19. So the next thing we want to do is add the Ubuntu server to GNS3. We do that by going to Edit, Preferences, VMware, VMware VMs, New. So let's go back to GNS3, go to VMs, VMware VMs, and hit New. Run this VMware on a local computer, and you can see that it sees it, and we'll hit Finish. We'll go ahead and click Apply. So once we've added the VMware VM to GNS3, if we go to the All Devices, you can see now the Ubuntu 64-bit option. The device is now located inside of GNS3. So we want to drag and drop this guy over to our network, our working space inside GNS3. So the next option is, before we start the VM, the Ubuntu VM, we want to configure the server to show the two interfaces. So if you remember earlier on in the video, I showed you that we had the two interfaces on the VMware machine, right? We went through and we added the second interface. Now this is where this comes into play, why that is important. Because when installing the VM inside of GNS3, we need to also configure it for two adapters. So if we go back to GNS3, we right click on this, go to Configure, then we're going to go to Network, and then Adapters, we're going to select two, and then we're going to select the option to allow GNS3 to override the non-custom VMware adapter. So we'll hit Apply and OK. And the next thing we're going to do is add a switch. So this switch is going to allow us to basically add multiple devices from, we're basically using one link from the VMware VM to access the switch. Then the switch is going to have access to multiple host devices, our target devices. So once we get Ansible up and running on the Ubuntu server, we're going to see that this is important. We just need one connection to the switch, and then the switch is going to have all of our connections to our end devices. So let's go ahead and add the switch now into GNS3. This is going to be the Ethernet switch. And we're going to go ahead and add, we'll just go ahead and add a couple more routers to kind of emulate the diagram that we had at the beginning of the video. Okay. So this is where we're going to build out the connection. Now we add our connections. So this is pretty straightforward. We go to this option here, add a link icon, and we're going to select the Ubuntu machine. We're going to select the Ethernet 1, and then we're going to just select Ethernet 0 on the switch. So we'll go ahead and do this for R1, R2, and R3. So we'll just do fast Ethernet 0, 0, connected to Ethernet 1, and then R2, fast Ethernet 0, 0, it's going to be Ethernet 2, and then fast Ethernet 0, 0 on router 3 to Ethernet 3. Okay. So let's go back to our step-by-step guide. Now that we have all of the connections built, what I show you in the step-by-step guide is how to do it just for one router, but I just want to show you in this video 3 routers. So let's go ahead and boot up the routers and the Ubuntu server. Go ahead and start router 1. And so what you're going to see, depending on what you have, the specifications of your CPU and memory on your laptop or workstation, whatever you're dealing with, your computer, you just want to kind of keep note at the CPU utilization, because GNS3 can be pretty resource intense. It can use a lot of your memory and CPU utilization. So there is built into GNS3, there's a thing called the idle PC value, and you can get this. You want to try to set this value when your router is idle. So when it's done loading and you're at the prompt at the, I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll go ahead and we'll try to console into router 1. And what that brings up is this connection. Let's go ahead and hit enter. And so now we know that once all of this is done, right, once the device has been booted and we're at the command prompt, the device is idle. So we can go ahead and click idle PC, and it's going to compute some values for us. And we want to select the option with the asterisk next to it. And that should help with our CPU utilization. That should help drop. So you can see the first one has the asterisk next to it. We'll go ahead and hit apply and OK. And you can see that our utilization is dropping a little bit, so that's good. Okay, so we have router 1 powered up and it's started. We'll go ahead and turn up the Ubuntu server. Go ahead and right click it and hit start. We can see that it shows that it's already running. Okay, so what I did was I turned off our instance inside of VMware. That's why we got that error. So let's go ahead and right click start. And while we're waiting for that to boot up, what we'll do on R1 is we'll go ahead and we'll set up the interface, the fast Ethernet 00. So config T. We'll do interface FA00. We'll do the IP address of 192.168.158.200. That's going to be a /24. And we'll do a no shut on the interface to bring the interface up. And we'll go ahead and write the configuration. So the 158.200, the reason why we use that is because we are, if we go back to our documentation, we want an IP address that's on the same subnet as the interface that's on our Ubuntu VM. So that's 158.128. So what we'll try to do is we'll go to R1, now that we have an IP address assigned to it. We'll go ahead and try to ping the Ubuntu VM. So that's going to be 128. And as you can see, we now have reachability to the virtual machine, the GNS3 virtual machine through, the Ubuntu virtual machine through GNS3 from R1. So R1 is able to ping the VM. So let's do this. We'll go back to GNS3 and we'll boot up R2 and R3. And as you can see, now we see the link between the switch and the Ubuntu VM as green as well. So this is looking very good for us. We've got ICMP reachability configured. So we can just add a note here. We'll put in the IP addresses so that we're not getting confused. 192.168.158. That was the Ubuntu VM. And then what we'll do is we'll create R1 is going to be 200. R2 will be 201. And then R3 is going to be 202. So let's go ahead and get reachability, ICMP reachability done. So let's go ahead and console into R2. And then we'll also console into R3. All right, so R2, looks like it's good. Go fast Ethernet 00, IP address 192.168.128.201. Subnet mask is going to be /24. We'll do a no shut on the interface, and then we'll save the configuration. Router 3 is going to be 202. So we'll do interface FA00. Address. Okay. So now we have the IP addressing nailed down inside of our network. So let's go ahead and try to test. we'll go ahead and try to test this. So we'll log into our VMware device, the Ubuntu server, and we'll do a ping from the server, the Ubuntu server, to all of our routers, all three of our routers. While we're waiting for that, we can just go to SolarWinds, PuTTY sessions, or SSH sessions. Okay, so from R2, I'll do a ping 192.168.128. Let's see. Let me verify the network. Sorry, it's 158.128. So I've got that wrong. Let me go ahead and fix that real quick. So it was 158. Okay. Let's go here. Sorry about that. It's going to be 158.202. And if we go back to GNS3, you're probably wondering what the heck was I doing? I don't know. So 158 is the subnet. 128 is the Ubuntu server. All right, so let's go back to router 3. We'll try a ping to 158.128. That is the Ubuntu server. So ping 192.168.158.128. And you can see that I have reachability. Let's go to router 2, do the same thing. Ping the Ubuntu server 192.168.158.128. And we have reachability. So everything's looking good. From all three routers, we can ping the virtual machine, the Ubuntu server, which is going to be our Ansible controller, once we install Ansible later in part 2 of this video, or of this lab. Okay, let's go into, now that we're back inside the Ubuntu server, let's just try a quick ping from the server to all of the routers. So 192.168.158.200, that's R1. You see that I am able to reach it. I'm seeing a reply. Let's go to 201. That's router 2. You see that I have reachability to it. And then the last device, which is router 3, is going to be 202. So this is good. This is the first step, is making sure that we have reachability through GNS3 between the VM and all of our routers. So let's go back to our step-by-step guide. And I believe the last thing that we need to do here, now that we have reachability, ICMP, is we need to enable SSH. So let's go ahead and do that. Because if you don't know, we're going to be using the Ubuntu VM as the Ansible controller, and we're going to be reaching out to these routers via SSH to automate network configurations to those devices. And again, those connections are going to be through port 22 SSH. So we need to make sure that we have SSH reachability from the Ansible controller to our network devices. So let's go ahead and get SSH configured on the routers. So we'll go to R1. First thing we do is give it a domain name. And I believe we're just going to do crypto key generate RSA. And then we're going to select 2048. So we'll do that on R2 as well. Crypto key generate RSA 2048. So we'll do this on all 3 of our routers. All right. So we'll do IP SSH version 2. And then we'll go under line VTY04. We'll do login local. Then we'll do transport input SSH. And then we'll create a user. And that should be it. So let's create this on all of them. Okay, so last but not least, router 3. We'll do IP SSH version 2. And we'll go line VTY04. Transport input SSH. Login local. And I think that's it. So if I do the show IP SSH now, version 2 on should have that on all the devices. And the last thing that I'm going to have to do, which is kind of a pain, is on the Ubuntu server, we have to enable SSH, which is fine. It's just to get access to these devices, since they're running older version. Let me just do this real quick. I need to install OpenSSH server. So let's go to our server. And we'll do the command. Oh, I think I might have OpenSSH dash server. Sorry about that. Okay, so it looks like we're having a problem here with getting out to the internet. Give me 1 second to verify what's going on. Okay, sorry about that. I apologize. I just had to reboot the VM. Let's go back to the VM now, and let's go ahead and install Open SSH server. So we'll go cd, or we'll do apt install. Okay, let's go ahead and install this. So once this is installed, what we're going to have to do is modify the file, the SSH config. We're going to have to add these. We're going to have to add these lines to the bottom of our SSH config file. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I will pause the video while I do that, and then I will be right back. So one thing I want to note too is I want to install the VI enhanced version, or the improved. So we're going to do Vim. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. So we'll do apt install vim. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video while this installs, and then while I update the SSH config file. Okay, so what I did is I updated the file, the SSH config file. I just paused it real quick because it does take a little time. So I just added these two lines at the bottom, CAX algorithms and host key algorithms. So I added those to the bottom of the file. And I believe that's all I need to do. So what we'll do, the last test in this video is we're going to try to SSH from the Ubuntu VM to R1, R2, and R3. Again, this is going to kind of simulate what we're going to do in Lab Setup Part 2 and all of the later Ansible GNS3 videos, where we are going to be connecting to our network appliances via SSH, via a SSH port 22 connection. So let's go ahead and try that. So from the Ubuntu server, the VM, we'll do SSH, and then the username that we created locally on the router. So it'll be steve at 192.168.158.200. Again, that's R1. And you see that we have our first issue. So let's go ahead. I'm going to pause the video real quick and take a look and see what's going on. Okay, it looks like I got it to work. The last thing I forgot to do is uncomment out the ciphers. So yeah, that'll bite you if you're not careful. So I had to go back into the file and uncomment out the ciphers. So once I did that, you can now see that I'm getting, when I'm trying to SSH to R1, I'm getting prompted to continue. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the password that I created for the local user. And now you can see the Ubuntu VM that we're going to use as our Ansible controller. You can see now that it is able to connect to R1. So that's great. So let's go ahead and try the other devices. If I do a show IP interface brief, you can see that this is it. This is R1, where I have the IP 200 on FA00. So that's good. Let's go ahead and exit out of that. And then back on the Ubuntu server, we'll do SSH to 201. If we go back to our lab diagram, 201 is R2. So let's go ahead and SSH over to that from our Ubuntu VM. And you can see that Once we put in the local user and password that we set up, you can see that I'm able to reach R2. So let's do a show IP interface brief. And looks good. Do a show version to 3725. Looks good. So let's go ahead and exit out of R2. And the last thing we're going to do is SSH to 202. So if we go back to the diagram, 202 is R3. And that's it. That is it. 3725. Show IP interface brief. Up on FA00. Go back to our step-by-step guide, and I believe that's the end of the lab. So that is the beginning of what we're trying to accomplish here, which is inside of GNS3, what we have now done is we have, just to give you guys a review of the video, what we've done in conclusion is we installed VMware Player, VMware Workstation Player. We installed Ubuntu Desktop. And then we bridged, or we connected the Ubuntu VM into GNS3. We created a switch connection to 3 routers. We assigned them all IP addresses on the same subnet, the 158.0/24. And then the last thing we did is we were able to ping from the VM to the Ubuntu VM server to all of the network devices. And the last thing we did was we tested SSH from the Ubuntu VM, which is going to be our Ansible controller and the labs that we do next. And those SSH connections were to R1, R2, and R3. So that's it. That's the end of the video. I have, again, on my GitHub account, on our GitHub account, we have the README file, which shows everything we're going to do. And then it also has the step-by-step guide, which allows you to configure everything that we're doing. And I'm going to include a link to this GitHub repository in the video. So this is the Ansible GNS3 lab setup part 1. In part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to go a little deeper into Ansible. We're going to actually configure it on the Ubuntu VM. And then we're going to run some simple Ansible playbooks, set those up so that we can show you how we can perform network automation via Ansible to our network devices inside of GNS3. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.